a bumper-ish weekend of sport, Will, given the volume of Premier League games. What's going to tickle your fancy over the next little while?
Do you know what's going to catch me slightly on Friday, Owen, is that you've got a pretty interesting game in the La Liga title race, which is on pretty much at the same time as Spurs against Manchester United. So Spurs United is huge in terms of the race to get into the Champions League for next year. So I think that's probably going to be my primary focus. That'll be on the TV. I might well get the iPad out and watch Sevilla against Barcelona, which kicks off at 9 o'clock Irish time on Friday night too. Barca are currently a couple of points ahead of Real Madrid. Madrid have got a difficult game away to Real Sociedad on Sunday, which might be worth watching the Battle of the Reals, but we'll have to see if Barcelona can extend their lead back out to 5 points against a very difficult opponent in Sevilla. It's one of their most difficult games that's left in the season, so that's on Friday too. And if your family members or loved ones can put up with you having two TVs on, or a TV and an iPad on in the living room, I suggest probably keeping an eye on both games. But I can't overstate how important Spurs against Manchester United is. It's almost one of those kind of perfect matches to kick us back into the first weekend of the restart.
Yeah, well, it's good to have it back. Time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
OTBsports.com is where we're starting. Those Brian Kerr comments are our top story. Maybe I should have spoken out, he said, as he examines his conscience. We've got Royal Ascot tips for Gold Cup Day. That is up today. We've got Tom Malone with us on the show to give us his tips very shortly indeed. Stradivarius, the favourite for the Gold Cup at the moment. Niall Quinn hasn't been to many League of Ireland games. Brian Kerr on the FAI League of Ireland dispute at the moment, and the OTB brief is live every single morning. This morning it is about Premier League, taking a knee, Louise, flops, Hawkeye drama and League of Ireland talks.
Irish Independent then, Owen. One of the main stories inside the paper today is a continuation on the FAI story, which we've been talking about all week really, and it's an increased amount of money from the FAI, albeit it is dependent on them getting the money from the government, Sport Ireland or FIFA. So this story by Dan McDonnell, it first appeared online last night, but it's inside the Irish Independent Sports section today. Last week, Premier Division clubs in the League of Ireland were being offered a financial package somewhere between €95,000 and €160,000. That's now likely to be increased to €190,000. You might wonder, why is that extra money available? Well, they've scrapped the idea, which they did have over a month ago, where the rest of the Premier Division season could have been played at 5 neutral venues. I believe at the time they were considering both Thomond Park and at Lone Town Stadium to be one of those, or to be 2 of those venues, and the rest to be in Dublin. But it looks like the fixtures will now take place at the home grounds for the League of Ireland clubs. So this frees up a bit of extra money in that there wouldn't be the rent being paid to those 2 venues, and that potentially the extra money which has been saved could be used for the League of Ireland clubs to bring their stadia up to the regulations required for COVID-19. It looks like streaming is very much on the back burner too, which would have cost the FAI money. It looks like that proposed plan won't happen, and testing may well go by the wayside too. I know it's been crucial with the 4 European teams in trying to have the return to football, but it looks like testing is not going to be as rigorous or as expensive as first expected. But that money coming in from the FAI, which would be in excess of €3 million, is dependent on them actually finding the compensation. And the other battle that Owens and Quinn are having to fight at the moment is now potentially from schoolboy football. The biggest league in the country, the DDSL, have made their decision. They put out a statement yesterday evening that they're going to switch their under 11 leagues to 9 against 9, and under 12 will be 11 against 11. This goes hugely against what Ruth Doctor had put in place a couple of years ago, and the leagues had to take on across the country, which is that you'd have 7x7 at under 11 level and 9x9 at under 12. And the idea was to create some more space for these players to play on the pitch. So this is almost like an open disregard of what Ruth Doctor had put in. And now that the DDSL have adopted this, it's going to be interesting over the next few weeks while the new underage leagues are being created. Are other leagues going to follow suit? And if they do, they're going against the FAI model, which was meant to be across the board.
Yeah, very interesting development there this morning. It's almost like the FAI now have battles on 2 fronts. They have the League of Ireland situation, which obviously is extremely severe, the only summer league in the continent that isn't back up and running yet or doesn't have a start date. And then on the other front, you've got the schoolboy leagues reneging on certain directives from Ruth Doctor. So again, it's probably the most interesting story in Irish sport at the moment. It's constantly developing every single day. The Irish Examiner leads with match report from last night at the Etihad. City back with a bang on night of woe for Arsenal, beating them 3-0. Hawkeye late to the restart party, meanwhile, while Gunners' failings remain constant in changed world. And then also match report from Aston Villa against Sheffield United. Blades frustrated amid goal line technology controversy is the headline there.
Well, the Times Ireland edition this morning, Owen, going heavily on the first two games in the Premier League coming back. Matt Dickinson's article on the back page about the drama that we saw in the two games. First of all, the goal line technology issue that we've spoken about in Sheffield United against Aston Villa at Villa Park, and also the 3-goal drubbing that Man City handed out to Arsenal. Their headline today is drama that only football can deliver. And on their back page as well is a massive crossword if you want to play that.
Front of the Irish Times sports section. Imperious De Bruyne pulls strings as City restart with show of force. That goes the headline in Jamie Jackson's match report. Only blot on display was a nasty injury laid on to Eric Garcia, who was stretchered off. Mary Hannigan's TV view, meanwhile, football seems to have spent 100-day hiatus growing up, and United denied by goal line technology. That is Sheffield United, of course, as they drew 0-0 at Villa Park. That is the Irish Times.
I do like the sub-editor work in the Mirror today. Over the line, Nyland was almost in the Holt end, is what they've gone with the picture of Hawkeye. They've used the TV footage for the picture, as opposed to what the Hawkeye officials couldn't see with the occlusion of the defender and goalkeeper blocking their cameras, where they couldn't see if it was over the line. Very clearly, you can see the Aston Villa goalkeeper is about a yard back over the line, trying to hold that ball from going over. And their headline for Man City against Arsenal is off to a flyer. Sterling, KDB and Foden on target in a City stroll with a little help from a Louise red card nightmare. They're also touching on the tournament which is going to take place for the Champions League now after the remaining games are completed in the round of 16. Man City still have to navigate their game against Real Madrid if they're to qualify for the last 8, but they'll be played almost like a festival of football, like a blitz in Lisbon, and the Europa League is going to be concluded in Germany. Also an impact on the fixtures for the League of Ireland teams who are playing in Europe. They're going to be single leg qualifiers that they'll play from late August and September, and they're all covered in the Mirror. We also have our dates. It's going to be Thursday the 8th of October when Ireland play their game against Slovakia, and that's going to be a crucial qualifier for Euro 2021.
The Irish Daily Star, meanwhile, goes with hoorah, Sterling's flying restart, but real shocker for Louise. What a balls up is their headline, which is fairly fitting really, on the Sheffield United ghost goal. No slow start for Stephen. Stephen Kenny says it's full steam ahead for Ireland's Euro 2020 plans. As you mentioned there already, UEFA confirming the playoff semi-final against Slovakia will take place on Thursday, October 8th. And fans could be present for finals. Manchester City fans could yet see their club lift a Champions League trophy. So this is Alexander Seferin, who was out yesterday saying that they're looking into the possibility of having fans in grounds. Wembley, for example, is going to be possibly one of the test grounds where they will try and implement social distancing while allowing fans to come in and watch their football team play.
Back of the Irish Daily Mail today, Sterling Silver, the obvious headline which they've gone with Raheem Sterling's goal in that 3-0 win for Man City. Scoreless draw between Aston Villa and Sheffield United. But something quite different on the back of the Irish Daily Mail today as well is something that we're still waiting for some clarity around, and that's what will happen if there's a positive test for a player in GAA. And Michael Clifford has got a piece on the back of the paper today. He says GAA teams will not have to go into collective quarantine in the event of an individual member testing positive for COVID-19. This is all part of Project Throw-In, which is likely to receive a boost, he says, in the coming days, when the government is expected to advise the players who come into contact with someone who's infected with COVID-19, whether that be a teammate or a mentor, they will be deemed as casual contacts. So a casual contact would require to monitor themselves for symptoms over a 14-day period, but they wouldn't have to self-isolate. So we're still waiting to see what's going to happen with a lot of these rulings on. And I know a lot of kind of clubs around the country, because they're going to be the guinea pigs in many ways when the club championships get back underway in the last week of July into the first week of August. What happens if a player was to test positive, and say maybe if a cluster of players were to test positive, and we're still waiting to see what's going to happen. Would games then be cancelled? Could teams be knocked out of competitions? So we're still waiting for the detail on that, but that's interesting that they would only be considered a casual contact and that the entire team wouldn't have to go into quarantine if one player was to test positive.
A cluster is such a haunting word at this point, isn't it? That if there was a cluster of GAA players who tested positive, that's not only that doesn't only have big implications for the GAA getting back up and running and the club championships getting back up and running. It's got big implications for the country as a whole, that if there were to be a cluster discovered, it would be bad news indeed. But you're looking at the signs from abroad and from the professional leagues at least, and even from the League of Ireland testing, things look positive, and you're very much touching wood, as you say that, at the moment in terms of getting these things up and running. So hopefully, I like the way Project Throw-In is the name they've gone for as well. Can you restart a league post-COVID-19 without calling it Project something? But Project Throw-In, as good a name as I would have come up with anyway. Back page of the Irish Sun is Govidiots. Wilder Fury, very good, as Tech Gaff hits Prem's return. That is excellent punnery from the back of the Sun this morning. Stirrer winner, David a loser, Manchester City 3, Arsenal 0. I can plan. Ireland boss Stephen Kenny says it is now full steam ahead in his preparations after a slow start. And Project Knee Start is their punny headline on the Black Lives Matter protest. That is the back of the Irish Sun.
Yeah, the Guardian today own back with a blunder. The ghost goal technology farce ruins the restart for the Blades. Sheffield United denied what would have been a win, and a great picture of Michael Oliver being questioned and pointing down at his watch, which should have been signalling that goal went in between Aston Villa and Sheffield United. Interesting story in the top left of the paper today too, which is that potentially might be a US bid which could challenge the expected Saudi takeover of Newcastle United. It looks like their decade-long period with Mike Ashley is heading towards an end, but apparently a US-based consortium, which is headed up by a TV chief, have now put in a bid of £350 million, which was the asking price that Mike Ashley had for the club. And maybe there might be an opportunity for Newcastle not to sell to those Saudi investors who are looking to come in from the royal family. I think the Premier League will probably be happy if that was to happen, because they've been trying to take him to court over TV rights. We'll see what happens with this story, but it looks like there's another twist in the Newcastle story on.
The Daily Telegraph leads with a photograph of Raheem Sterling celebrating his goal against Arsenal last night. The main story here then is Hawkeye sorry for goal blunder. The occlusion. The damn occlusion, Will. That is what did Sheffield United in last night. So that is the Herald, or that is the Telegraph rather. You're on to the Herald next.
Yeah, I think occlusion is probably a term that we're going to use over and over again over the next while. It's amazing. I always kind of would have went with blocked, but if you can find a more difficult word to use, it's always useful from time to time to try and sound clever. But the Herald this morning, again, has got a big focus on the football from last night. Again, they've gone with Blades denied by costly mistake in terms of Aston Villa against Sheffield United. City stunned the Gunners is the main story. Stroll for Pep's men puts Pool celebrations on hold. So Liverpool will now have to wait until their game against Crystal Palace to be crowned champions. They won't be able to win the title when they take on their rivals Everton at the weekend. They're also continuing with their Anthony Daly series, where he's been putting in a series of diaries about his time in charge of the Dublin Hurlers, and they're looking at the 2012 All-Ireland Senior Hurling Qualifier on that great summer that Dublin had, winning the Leinster Championship and getting a right run through the All-Ireland as well. And they've got an interview with Stephen Kenny, who says that he's happy with clarity on playoffs. So he knows what's happening now for his first 3 games in charge, 2 friendlies to be played in September, and then that crucial game against Slovakia, which will come round very quickly indeed in about 5 months' time.
If you Google occlusion, there's a lot of dentistry terms, Will. The position of the teeth when the jaws are closed, that is what occlusion is. It's also a process of meteorology as well, so if there's any dentists or meteorologists joining us this morning, well, you will probably be pointing and laughing at us being so mystified by the phrase occlusion. Irish News is next up. This morning, they are leading with Graham. Don't put players into a club versus county spat. This is Mickey Graham, who's vowed that he won't call on his players until after the Cavan Club Championship is finished, saying there is no need to put players into a club versus county row. If everybody had that same attitude, there will probably be a lot of disputes avoided over the next couple of months. Wilder then, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. That is Chris Wilder, of course, referring to the ghost goal that occurred last night.
Racing Post, understandably owned, still going very heavy on Royal Ascot, and it's Stradivarius, who I'm sure we'll be talking about with Tom Malone in the next few minutes, who is their big tip for today as he goes for a Gold Cup hat-trick at Ascot. We also see a picture of Lord North, who was maybe a bit of a surprise for John Gosden in the Prince of Wales Stakes yesterday afternoon, which was the big race on day 2. So again, they've gone very heavy on that. And on their back pages, again, they're going for a preview already of Spurs against Manchester United, already being seen as the big Premier League game of this weekend.
Right, let's finally have a look at the brand new OTB Sports app this morning. There's a great exclusive up there for you today. It's a 45-minute long interview with Brian O'Driscoll and Jamie Dornan, available right now, chatting about rubbing shoulders with the best of the best in the golf and the celebrity world. You can get it by downloading the OTB Sports app right now in the App Store or on the Google Play Store. You'll find it at the top of your personalised feed and also in the Best of OTB section. And as well as that, you've got all the latest sports news, OTB Sports Radio, where you can listen to OTB AM, the video section there, as you can see, and our OTB podcast network. So that is the OTB Sports app, available right now in the Google Play Store or on the App Store. Right, plenty coming up in the next hour here on OTB AM as we bring you Keith Wood's State of the Union. Racing is next, though, with Tom Malone. Back in a sec.